Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations, you're nearly there. Just a little bit longer to go. But luckily, we've got some great content for you to finish your day out today. It seems that we've had a common theme going through the day, and I think it might have been planned, but I might be wrong, where the subject of brand has been resurfacing. Now, over the years, I think, certainly from the advent of digital, we started doubting what brand meant, what consumers thought about brand. Did loyalty to a brand mean anything anymore? Was it all about discount codes and the cheapest product absolutely possible? But actually what we're starting to see now is people starting to consider all of this e-commerce stuff, whether it's influencers, whether it's social, websites, apps, it's actually retail. The fundamentals of retail haven't changed. Right product, right price, right place. What's changed is how we talk to our customers, how we talk to that consumer, how we talk to the communities that we're looking for. And sometimes that causes us to stop and think about how we talk about brand, how we value brand, and how we take that forward and communicate that out to those consumers and to those communities. And where we used to talk about audiences, we're now, community sounds a bit more cuddly, so we'll talk about communities. But at the same time, we've still got to be able to reinvent how we're having those conversations. But fundamentally, we as consumers, and often in our little tech bubble, we often forget that we are consumers. How would we expect a brand to talk to us? What does a brand mean to us? And how do we relate to those brands? And do we still honestly relate to brands? Or are we a bit more promiscuous now? I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to leave that to Gemma. Gemma, VML, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, there is 22 gifts and 45 minutes between this session and grabbing a glass of wine. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Anja Spielmann, who is the immense force behind Mars Food. And today we're going to be having a candid conversation about how brands grow in the AI era. So we're going to start by looking at some of the concepts to begin with, looking at the idea of mental and physical availability, and pressing hard into this idea of digital availability. So we're going to start there. We're then going to move into a little bit more about the forces of change that are driving some of these shifts from a consumer standpoint. And then we're going to talk about how brands play to win, because often many brands, unfortunately, play not to lose. So there's a really powerful distinction there that I think it's really important for brands and businesses to recalibrate and get right. So let's start with the commerce revolution. So I think this has been bandied around a lot today, right? And so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. We have been on this well-trodden path now for the last 10 years or so, where we've seen this collision between sales and marketing. And actually, a couple of years ago, we had COVID. We saw a surge in online retail. And actually, there's been this recalibration over the last couple of years. And actually, for me, I firmly believe we are entering a paradigm shift. AI is going to upend everything that we do from a brand and from a retailing standpoint. So we're going to hear from the master, Anja, and what Mars Food is doing in order to get ahead of this AI revolution. So let's quickly pad through some of those forces of change. So I want to introduce you to my friend here. So this is not Flounder, this is Shopper. Shopper represents every single one of us. It's a consumer, right? It's a person. And Shopper now has less attention than a goldfish. So it's around 8 seconds of attention, right? And actually, if you just go back 6 years ago, that was 15 seconds. So humans, us, people, right, we have less attention than a simple goldfish. And the reality for a brand, for any modern marketer, is that actually capturing that attention within, whether it's a retail walled garden or within kind of a customer journey has never been more challenging. So that's the first force of change that we want to consider as we're thinking about the paradigm shift. The second area is this idea of infobesity, right? So again, if we just go back 10 years, the average consumer saw 5,000 ads every single day. Today, they see 12,500 ads every single day. In 2 years, they will see 24,000 ads every single day. So, you know, our attention is getting less. We see this correlation to addressability. And actually, like, there's this real interplay, this dynamic around fast and slow thinking, because it's so challenging for brands to really stand out within, you know, the infinite aisle and shelf. Now that comes on to the next area, which again is interlinked with the first two, which is this idea of choice paralysis. Now, yes, it is a real thing. Within this kind of from a psychological standpoint, this is called overload bias, and actually it really renders consumers and shoppers truly like incapacitated at point of sale, whether that's physical or digital. And actually, when we're thinking about high consideration purchases, so you know, like you know, a TV or new hair straighteners or something like that, right? Actually, the challenge here is that consumers are pushing back on making purchase decisions by up to 48 hours on any item up to around $50. And the challenge that has for a modern brand or business is that actually that has a knock-on impact with your sell-through and your kind of top and bottom line growth. So again, this is something that is really important for brands to start to think about. How do you make your products as easy to understand, the benefits really popping out from whatever the shelf is, whether it's physical or digital, so that the customer can choose you with ease. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the digital shelf. I think we all have heard the digital shelf is here to stay. The challenge for a lot of brands like Mars is that actually, you know, there's on average about 400 products, possibly more for you, Anja, I'm sure you would agree, that are being sold on retail, on every single retailer. Now, when you start adding all of the variables within that, so price, promotion, availability, content, media, you know, creativity, when you start adding all of those assets in, it's over 80,000 optimizations every single week. And humans cannot optimize at that rate, right? We have to augment with machines. We have to build a resilient tech stack that allows us to garner the insights so the smart people like Anja can really build out the best campaigns that help brands stand out from any shelf. And I think the key kind of parting point in this kind of opening section is the reality is that retailers hold all the cards. And, you know, given that they're auction and algorithmically driven, actually they are in control. The walls are continuing to get higher. 98% of retailers in a recent survey said that they are over-investing in retail media because, quite frankly, they know the consumer data, they've got the inventory placement, and the margins are between 60 and 80%. So it's kind of like, it's a new revenue stream and it's kind of free money. Then when you start looking at actually where the shift is happening, we are seeing them moving into the clouds, into clean room technology. So again, from a brand standpoint, it becomes increasingly challenging how you traverse all of these walled gardens in an elegant and consistent manner that helps your products really stand out from the shelf. Now, I think we might have all heard of this thing called ChatGPT. Raise your hands if you've used it. I know I have. Yeah, I mean, it should be everyone. I know everyone. I know some of you are just, fibbing. So OpenAI dropped, and interestingly enough, the hype, when you look at the hype curves, Meta had so much hype around the metaverse, but actually has that translated into usage? No, it has not. This dropped. Nobody was expecting it, not even in the AI kind of circles. And it has really upended the way that a modern marketer thinks. And the truth is that there's so many opportunities here, but there's also a lot of risks from a brand reputation. Because if you think about it, if you've got AI, training AI, your brand tone of voice, your assets, your distinctive kind of positioning and equity is at risk. So there needs to be some really clear governance and protocols in place, which we're going to touch on when we have our fireside chat with Anja. So with all that said and done, how do brands win? How do they stand out from any shelf? Well, if this works, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Bible of brand growth, which is How Brands Grow, by Byron Sharp. And he, many years ago, came up with this concept around mental and physical availability. So this concept is well trodden, right? We look at our MMMs on it, our multi-touch attribution, our last touch attribution. We plan both top down and bottom up as a business using a lot of this thinking. So we are not saying that this is wrong at all. We firmly believe in this thinking about mental availability being about top of mind. So when you think about, I don't know, rice, you think about...
Ben's original.
There we go. We didn't even rehearse that. But if you start to, so it's all about how do you create that resonance in terms of brand connotations with individual categories, right? So being top of mind, physical availability, being present on shelf, right? So being easy to be found, being easy to be bought. So brand love and brand buy. So for us, we firmly believe that in the AI era, we got to push harder. We need to move into this idea of digital availability, which is truly being one-to-one and being driving personalization at scale, so that wherever, whoever, and whenever someone is presenting the signals to purchase, you as a brand, you as a kind of a modern marketer are able to connect with the right assets in order to drive the conversion. So with that said and done, how do we play to win and not play not to lose? So we're going to very quickly touch on 3 areas, and then we're going to get into talking about this in a lot more kind of meaty and meaningful ways through one of the largest CPG businesses in the world. So we're going to touch on structuring for success, how do you build a resilient tech stack, and then how do you accelerate into the clouds, garnering the right insights that is going to drive the actions. So let's start with structuring for success. So again, if we think about like a typical business, right, whether you're talking about CPG or consumer electronics, right, there has always been the kind of bifurcation in terms of the teams and the structures. So you've got sales, you've got marketing, you've got supply chain, you've got logistics, et cetera, et cetera. The truth is that in this new AI-led era, it's all about signal-based. So we've got to look at where the demand is coming from almost on a real-time basis, and we need to start structuring our teams so that it's much more agile. Now, what do I mean by agile, and what do I mean by diversification? Well, actually it means two things. So first of all, there needs to be this combination of sales and marketing and supply chain so that you can win within marketplaces like Amazon or Walmart, or even the way that we're seeing the Tesco's of the world moving in, right? But then also from a diversification standpoint, it's about talent. The truth is that insights come from large language models and large amounts of data. So you've got to have a true data centricity within the organization, and that means hiring data scientists. So again, in terms of starting to build out the operating model for the future, it's incredibly important that you start nurturing and cross-training individuals so that you can be set up for this success as we move through this paradigm shift. I think just touching on this very quickly, we also see this rebalance kind of around the testing mindset. So I think it's fair to say that, all of us right in this room, we will have objectives, right, that are aligned to the vision and the values within our business. But actually, in order to win at scale within this auction-driven environment, you've got to test. And you've got to test and experiment at scale. So you have to start creating a culture where it's okay for things not to be brilliant first time right. It's got to be okay to fail. And that's sometimes, certainly in the brand side, that it's often quite tricky to kind of get that balance right. So look at the objectives, create a kind of a mechanism and construct and scaffolding where testing is okay, and then allow for technology so that you can harmonize the thinking so that you get the right insight at the right time in order to outpace the competition. So to that point, digital spine is really important. You've got to start coalescing the data. So whether it's around media, and it might be around the, the kind of segments or the audience cohorts or the psychographic ideals that sit within that space, whether it's around things like stock and availability and your material throughput time. So you've got to start pulling these into one environment and actually creating a stack that goes across your entire value chain so that you're pulling the right insight or right use case that's going to drive the objective you're trying to achieve. Not going to labor this point, but this is an example from a client. You can see here, it's very, very complicated. We have product information that's coming from PXM. We've got pricing information that's coming from ERP. We've got inventory data that's coming from supply chain. We've got segmentation data that's coming from media arms, creative insights, production insights. But actually, it needs to oscillate around the needs of your business. And therefore, there's going to be a lot of plugins to the partners of choice. So again, it's just more of an example of this is not easy. Like if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And it takes a lot of consideration around, what is the growth strategy, what are the territories that matter, where are the retailers that are going to be driving significant strategic value for you, and then how are you going to be addressing it with your consumer. So again, just a nice idea around that. And I think to that end, right, like there has to be that kind of bridge between global and local, which, some organizations are globally led, right? Others are, decentralized in the markets based on nuances, especially around food. And so there has to be the consideration in terms of the broader business structure. So therefore, actually the winning zone, which you see in the middle, has to be a combination of how do we get the right products based on the signals and the moments that matter in a way that is highly governed so that you can start looking at things like claims or legal considerations that are very important in certain categories like food, but also within kind of beauty and pharma. And so so that you can start scaling with AI longer term. Now, this is a nice example that we, within VML, have built out, which is it's called our Commerce Studio. And it's a way that allows to augment a lot of our kind of our brands and clients' needs around creating the master content, so master product detail page content, and then creating the adaptations, whether it's in a local language, whether it's fit for a retailer, and then optimizing at scale, because we know that the optimization cycles here needs to be every quarter. And most brands set it and forget it. So it's about how do we beat the competition? How do we use organic content in order to drive visibility within retail and at shelf? So, and I think just in terms of like thinking about this 360, and I mentioned this earlier on, which is, for me, I firmly believe that the future battleground for commerce is in the clouds. We see that retailers are, first of all, looking at their kind of data fidelity. They've shifted into retail media. They're now moving into the clean rooms. So we've seen Amazon with, you know, like AMC, Amazon Marketing Cloud. We're seeing many of the other retailers starting to partner around Snowflake, Trade Desk, etc. But actually, many of them are building out their clean rooms in their own right. So again, for a brand, it's really important to start thinking about how do you traverse the different clean rooms? How do you possibly build your own clean room so that you can start assimilating the right data, so that you can do the awareness as well as the conversion, so the brand love and the brand buy, based on those one-to-one connections you have with loyal customers. So again, I think with all of this, right, it has to be tied back to insights. That is the key thing. So what we have found also through some research that we've recently run with WARC and Kantar is that actually by garnering these insights, so creating your resilient tech stack, building out your data spine, and then moving into the clouds, you get so many insights you can use for creativity, for brand experience, and that will allow you to stand out from any shelf. And actually, the brands that are doing this remarkably well, like Mars Foods, have a 12x improvement in ROI and a 4x improvement in profitability. So we know from the work that we have done, and we have showcased at places like Cannes and the Effies, this works. So I think with that said, you know, when we think about within Mars, there is a beautiful example around digital availability. Now, if we take the example of Ben's Original, and I'm sure Anja's going to talk about this when we get into the conversation very shortly, there was a massive rebrand, right? And then after that rebrand, it was how do we make sure that the brand equity is not lost? How do we create the salience in the category? Then how do we drive that presence, findability, and also purchase, so the brand love, the brand buy? And I think this is a beautiful example because we know that, you know, during the cost of living crisis, that people are having to make their money work even harder. We know that actually, you know, with rice, there's an opportunity to make meals go much further. So there were some beautiful content that was created from a brand experience standpoint that, based on the signals and the insights, it was then created into all the different assets that could live across all of the retailers in the UK and create that connectivity between recipe to basket. And again, it's a campaign that is a move from being a moment in time to being a continual drumbeat, and it's incredibly successful for the business. So I think with that said, let's now hear from the master herself, Anja Spielmann.
Thank you, Gemma. Shall I introduce myself quickly?
Do you know
get
what?
a briefing moment.
I was going to say, like, I think let's start, because we're having this candid conversation with our friends here. Let's start with just hearing a bit more about you, like your background, your experience. Because every time I talk to you, I learn so much more about you. By the way, like Anja is just about to start a PhD in AI, just between friends. So, this woman is pretty amazing. So anyway, over to you.
So yeah, my name is Anja. By my dialect, you probably hear I'm not native British. I'm Austrian. 13 years at Mars. As I always say, the longest relationship in my life. And I'm currently have the pleasure to look after food as a brand experience, looking after the whole holistic brand experience for all our food brands across the globe, from the US to Europe to Australia. So pretty fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, it goes without saying that Mars is going through a huge digital transformation at the moment. So I'd love to start by just understanding what was the driver behind that?
The driver behind that, we always go back to our brands and consumers. That's the most important. And that's where we're starting mapping out our consumer journeys. And consumer journeys have massively changed over the last 10 years, I would say. And it's not in the old days in the 60s where, very easy consumer journey was, I am at home, I go into the supermarket, I do my shopping, I go home, and I do my cooking. Now the consumer journey, we call it, is more as a hexagon. Consumers are jumping around touch points constantly. Whilst you're looking at the advertising, you immediately can buy. So the consumer journey has challenged us to really start to think differently and to really come back to a very simple model of we need the right message at the right moment for consumer to drive the conversion. And yeah, that's where the digital transformation jumps in. Our consumers are not there where they used to be. And there was a long time of we need to follow the consumer. Now we want to be ahead of the consumer. We want to be there before they are there.
Yeah, totally. And I would love to kind of double click into the role you see AI playing in shaping kind of transformation and the strategies. I'll hang fire 1 second. Will we have a little bit of a touch up? Are we good?
Are we good? Yeah? Okay.
Super. So Anja, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about the role you see AI playing as part of that transformation journey, and how right now is AI impacting the decision making within the leadership team that you sit on?
Yeah. So personally, I think AI is one of the biggest opportunity and one of the biggest transformation we probably have seen in the last 10, 15 years within marketing. And the opportunity for me lies very much in become more personalized for our consumers. We get so much, you mentioned it, prediction 20,000 ads in 3 years. We can't absorb that anymore, and we have to become more relevant for our consumers. We have to grab their attention. Humans can't do that anymore. We can't. So that's where we really need AI, the insights from AI, but also then in order to generate the right content and to be at the right place to really make the difference. AI is a game changer for us. On the flip side of that, so that's the future, but on the flip side of that is we are all in an experimenting phase with AI. Let's be honest, we all have not figured out what the right tools are, where to go, how are they impacting it, how do we best do it, and that's the phase we're currently in of really looking at the holistic consumer experience and the consumer journey, and where does it make sense to bring AI in to really augment the experience, to get more effective and more efficient, and where are areas where we're not ready yet, and that's where we're experimenting at the moment. So test and learn, I think it's the most favorite used term at the moment, in order to then scale up and bring it into the business on a scaled pace.
And I think, if I may, I would also love to ask the question around kind of governance, right? Like, Mars Inc. is a massive business, right? And, transcends so many different categories, of which Mars Food is one of the predominant, right? So I'd love to just understand, like, how are you guys governing it? Are they a kind of silver bullet that you guys are following?
I wish there would be a silver bullet. I wish I could give you the recipe of success. I think I'm coming and going. The thing with governance, I mean, for big brands, that's the biggest challenge we have, brand safety. And with AI coming in, and that's the question, we can't give up our brand safety. So that we have an AI governance board that works weekly, because change is happening on a weekly basis, where we really go through, okay, is it safe to do this? Yes or no? Will we make mistakes? Oh yeah, we will make mistakes for sure, but we try to minimize those mistakes. But the first thing we always question ourselves is about brand safety and really making sure whatever we do, we're doing in a brand safe environment.
Yeah. And I'd love to just spend a minute just thinking about, how do you create that connectivity between your business goals, right, or your organization goals, whether those are marketing led or kind of customer development led, and then how do you connect those with, let's say, your customer and your consumer needs? Like how do you calibrate that?
So we start always with the consumer first. The consumer dictates what we're doing, and that's where we really start bringing in the consumer at the center, and everything goes around there. And it starts, as said before, with the consumer journey, is how the consumers nowadays shop our products. And where it's super interesting for us, it's we have to break down those silos. And I know we have talked about silos 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but now with e-commerce coming in and the consumer journey being so different, not linear anymore, we have to break down the internal silos massively. So nowadays, when we have workshops, in the old days there was marketing in there, maybe trade marketing if we have been really nice. Nowadays, I mean, everybody is in our workshops because the consumer's journey touches everyone, from sales to trade marketing to supply. You mentioned it before. Everybody is in the room, and we are all working on it together because you can't do it in silos anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what it would be really interesting to kind of double click into is like, if we think about the digital spine and, what we were talking about, building this resilient tech stack, it'd be great just to get lift the hood of, how are you building out that tech stack? How are you creating kind of the brilliant foundations as well as tools and data sets so that you can innovate at scale?
Yeah. I think it's a challenge everybody in the industry at the moment is facing. So we have one great partner, WPP. So one of the tools we are now introducing is WPP Open, that helps us exactly to take the right decisions, to have the right stack behind what we need. Because the challenge today is you can get everything and nothing in one way. Because you can bid on one stack or the other stack, but you never get the full picture. Every day there's popping something new up, so you need strong partners on your side to really help you to build that. That's the first thing. The second thing is always don't be afraid of failure, I think. Don't be afraid of, yes, sometimes you will get some tech stack in, you try, doesn't work, doesn't deliver, and you need to change it and go somewhere else. For me personally, my job day to day, I'm joined in the hip with our DT team, our digital technology team. So we're really working on a daily basis together and looking into what can we do and what do we need. And one of the big unlockers for us, which was quite surprising, it sounds fundamental, is just getting the data and everything in an internal dashboard. And it sounds so fundamental, but for years, nobody really has thought about it. Let's bring everything to one dashboard that everybody can see the same and has the same truth. And building that internally was a huge unlocker. But then there comes all the other tech stack coming in that we are working and trying out together with you guys on WPP Open.
Yeah, it's a there's no secret sauce, right? And I think to your credit, you have been brave, right? You've been bold, you've been courageous as a leader to kind of give your teams the mandate to kind of test, to experiment, to really try and maybe at sometimes fail, but actually learn a lot. So it's definitely I think the right way to go for businesses that want to be be the winners, to be the leaders within this kind of AI paradigm shift. I'd love to just spend a short minute just talking about, in terms of consumer behavior, because to your point, you've mentioned about, the consolidation of a lot of the data, your first-party data, augmented with, partners and like WPP's second and third-party data, so that you can get very specific around the consumer needs and through that kind of shopper centricity. I'd love to just maybe talk about some of the examples that you have seen that has worked really well from a media standpoint or from a content standpoint.
Oh, so many examples that have worked well. So, for example, Vitsi is one of the examples probably to mention, which was for us a big breakthrough of testing content before it goes online to see really, does it drive the needle? Does it move the needle? Does the content work? Yes or no? So that's one of the things. Optimization, real in-life optimization when it comes to search. That's another one. PackView is the provider we have started working in 2023 with, and we saw amazing results in our M&Ms. I mean, real sales uplift driven by using PackView, which is great, or eFundamentals in Europe. So there's really some great examples and some great stack out there that really can help you to drive to get more effective and get more efficient and know what you're doing. I think that's the big challenge in this area, is the testing and really go out there to get the insights that in 10 years' time we are sitting here and we're like, here's the playbook of success. Here's the magic wand. We're really working hard on the background to create this magic wand.
Yeah, and I think the thing with all of this, right, is that it's about layering, right? And I think we talked about it. It's the great examples that you talked about in terms of the being bold and courageous from a kind of pack view, and then starting to integrate a lot of those kind of retail media insights into your full funnel media, and then actually seeing, okay, what was before versus after in terms of MMMs, and then the broader kind of multi-touch attribution within the business. It's just, and then layering on like the kind of digital shelf insights, you can really start to understand those dynamics and prioritize what works for the market, what works for the retailer, what works for the individual product. And again, I think this is where the success is really going to lie, because no brand is the same, right? And actually, like, there's going to be things like the importance of content within your category is immense, right? Because it's, you're eating food, it's going into your body. You need to really understand, okay, all of the benefits, from a physiological standpoint, but also like how it makes you feel, right? So, there's going to be areas that you have to push harder into depending on the brand. So that's an amazing example. I'd also love to just, you mentioned experimentation and, some of the AI-powered tools that you're using for consumer experience. I'd love to just kind of, again, lift the hood and just understand, like, what is your roadmap here? Like, how are you scaling like an operating system or a kind of demand-led, data-driven way of working across the business? Because that's a big undertaking.
It is a big undertaking. And as you have mentioned in your slides before, it's always the global regional tension as well. Not invented here syndrome. Yeah. I mean, it's
always,
real.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's real. It's existing. So what we do at the moment is, especially with AI coming in, we have roadmaps of 6 months, because within 6 months, so much changes. So we put out a big vision of, in 2-3 years, that's what we approximately where we want to be. But every 6 months we sit down and like, what's the roadmap? What are the next test and learns we want to do in 6 months? After we've done the test and learns, and we always choose one test case country with one market with one brand, in order to see does it work or not. And the reason is risk mitigation. I mean, let's be also here. honest, it is also a risk mitigation, but big enough to draw the right conclusions. So that's where we go in with this test case. Let's assume the test case is successful. That's where the fun then starts, because then you need to bring it into the organization and scale it up throughout the organization and bring it to other markets. What we have seen, what really helps when the test case is successful, to have the hard data and the objectives to be really linked to the vision, to then bring it into other markets, to other brands. But also what we have seen, if some markets get super excited about some of the test cases, and they just take it and they want to scale it up even before we are ready to scaling up. But after every test case, we sit down and we are quite intentional of where do we go next and how do we scale it up, because you can overwhelm our organization. Especially with AI, we all need to learn, and the capabilities need to be built in the organization as well. You can't just throw it out and say, go and run, because they will not work, is 100% sure. You really have to go step by step and first make sure the capabilities are there before you then on top layer the scaling up.
Do you know what? You touch on something that I think is so important, and I bet you it's important for every single person in this room, is, you know, AI is quite frankly a bit scary, right? Like, we know, certainly in my instance, maybe you know a bit more than me, but like, I know enough to be dangerous, so you know, and I'm constantly trying to upskill myself, but you have so many different people in any organization, right? So you're going to have the people that lean in and they want to learn everything about it, and then you're going to have people who are, you know, going to be like, you know, they'll go with it, you know, kind of be part of the mass, and then you're going to have the resistors, right? So again, it's I think it would be wonderful to hear about how are you kind of embarking in this kind of this journey that kind of educates and inspires those different kind of cohorts of users, right?
Look, I think it starts as a business challenge. The whole business needs to buy into it. And I think the digital transformation we're driving at the moment is very different to the digital transformations a couple of years ago, where it was very tactical, where it's like, this is a IT topic, and maybe later we bring it to somewhere else. This transformation starts with the top. Everybody on the top, the C-suite is fully bought in, and they are embracing it. And it's not, this is marketing, and this is finance, and this is supply. We are all in this transformation together, and it will transform all parts of the business. And that's how I think it needs to start. And people who are joining our business, they need to get inspired by that. Normally that happens very easy, because if they see that the C-suite is buying in, and everybody is on this journey, and everybody makes the same mistakes, it takes down the barriers of trying and getting into it. And then obviously you have these early adopters, and you use those early adopters to really create a movement, and you have these first success cases to create and underline the movement, and that's how you get more and more people into it. I think where it becomes really interesting and challenge is you have this test and learn culture, and yes, you will fail. And you have to really be honest to the organization and say to everybody, it's okay to fail, and we expect failure. If you don't have this culture where failure is not part of it, you're not going to learn. You're not going to encourage people to take risks, because then they will play it safe. They will play it not to lose rather than to win.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part, which is, you know, you clearly exhibit, like, you lead with empathy and with courage and being brave, so that actually it makes it okay. Now we are in the final throes, so I'm going to throw out one more question for you, Anja. So if we think about looking ahead, what role do you see AI playing in the future of branding and kind of consumer engagements for Mars Food?
I think it will help us to be more effective and more efficient, to be more personalized for consumers. We can deliver a much more personal, more relevant message to consumers that then will convert into conversion. And that's absolutely my hope, because as you said before, 80,000 optimizations a day, no human can do that. And consumers just get tired by bland advertising, by bland content, by being on retailer sites that are not up to the best they can be. So it's really about bringing this brand experience onto a next level in a more effective and efficient way.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, I could certainly, I wish I had a glass of wine so that we could continue this conversation, but I'm no doubt sure that we're going to have a few now. So I'm Gemma Spence from VML. I'm being joined by the remarkable Anja Spielmann from Mars Food, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.